Jasmine Taylor stared at her phone, the email blurring through her tears. The scholarship committee had reached their decision. Due to budget cuts, her funding would not continue next semester. She blinked hard, willing the words to change, but they remained stark on the screen. Without that money, her dream of becoming the first in her family to earn a master's degree was slipping away. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, shoving her phone into her purse. The tiny apartment she shared with Zoe felt even smaller this morning. The walls closing in as her roommate continued their argument from last night. "All I'm saying is that you could have at least texted that you'd be late with the rent," Zoe said, leaning against the kitchen counter. "My dad's been on my case about being responsible with money, and now I look like I can't even get my roommate to pay on time." Jasmine took a deep breath. "I told you I'd have it today. The transfer just took longer than expected." She checked her watch. "Look, I can't do this right now. I have that interview at the law firm in 40 minutes. The interview she'd spent weeks preparing for. The interview that could lead to the part-time job she desperately needed, now that her scholarship was gone. The interview she couldn't afford to be late for." Zoe rolled her eyes. "Whatever. Just make sure the money's in my account by tonight." Outside, the late September air held the first hints of fall, but Jasmine barely noticed the golden leaves or the crisp breeze. Her mind raced with calculations. How many hours she'd need to work at minimum wage to cover tuition? How long before her savings ran out? Whether she should call her mother, who was already working 2 jobs to help support Jasmine's younger brothers. The bus stop was crowded with morning commuters. Jasmine checked her watch again, anxiety bubbling in her stomach. The 8:15 should have arrived 5 minutes ago. She peered down the street, willing the bus to appear. Other people at the stop were doing the same, some cursing under their breath, others calling rideshares. When her phone buzzed with a traffic alert about a major accident blocking the bus route, Jasmine nearly threw it into the street. "Perfect. Just perfect," she growled, quickly mapping the subway route. If she ran, she might make it to the station in time to catch the express train that would get her downtown. Her heels, borrowed from a classmate and half a size too small, pinched her toes as she sprinted 3 blocks to the subway entrance. By the time she reached the platform, sweat dampened her hairline and the collar of her only good blouse. The express train was just pulling in, its doors opening to reveal cars already packed with commuters. Jasmine squeezed in just as the doors closed, finding herself pressed between a man with an enormous backpack and a teenager with headphones blaring music loud enough for everyone to hear. The air conditioning was barely working, and the familiar subway smell, a mix of perfume, sweat, and something vaguely mechanical, made her stomach turn. She clutched her coffee cup, the one luxury she'd allowed herself that morning, and tried to focus on the interview questions she'd practiced. What were her strengths? Why did she want to work for Henderson and Patel Law Associates? Where did she see herself in 5 years? Certainly not here, crammed in a subway car watching her future crumble. At the next stop, even more people pushed their way in. Jasmine found herself shoved deeper into the car, her coffee precariously close to spilling. The man with the backpack shifted, giving her an apologetic smile that she couldn't return. Her feet throbbed in the too tight shoes. 2 more stops. She could do this. Get to the interview, smile confidently, nail the questions, get the job, 1 step at a time, just like her mother always said when things got tough. The train lurched to a stop at Westlake Station. People pushed past her to exit, while others fought their way in. In the shuffle, Jasmine managed to create a tiny bubble of personal space. She checked her watch again. 22 minutes until the interview. If the train kept moving, she'd make it with a few minutes to spare. That's when she felt someone bump into her from behind. Under normal circumstances, Jasmine would have ignored it. Bumps happened on crowded trains. But as the woman moved past her, Jasmine's coffee cup tipped, sending hot liquid cascading down the front of her cream-colored blouse. No, she gasped, watching in horror as brown stains bloomed across the fabric. The blouse, carefully ironed that morning, the only professional top she owned, was ruined. The woman who had bumped her turned around. She was in her mid-30s with olive skin and dark hair pulled into a messy bun. She wore jeans and a loose-fitting navy sweater that partially concealed what appeared to be a small baby bump. "I'm so sorry," the woman said, reaching into her purse. "Let me help." Something in Jasmine snapped. The scholarship. The fight with Zoe, the late bus, the painful shoes, and now this. Her one chance at a good impression destroyed by a stranger who couldn't watch where she was going. Before she could think, before the rational part of her brain could stop her, Jasmine's hand shot out, connecting with the woman's face with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent car. The slap wasn't hard enough to hurt, not really, but it was enough to shock everyone, including Jasmine herself. Her hand tingled as she stared at the red mark forming on the woman's cheek. The woman's eyes widened, her hand going to her face. For a moment, neither of them moved. It was then that Jasmine noticed several things at once. First, the slight curve of the woman's belly was definitely a pregnancy, perhaps 4 or 5 months along. Second, when the woman had shifted, her sweater had pulled back to reveal something metallic clipped to her waistband, something that looked suspiciously like a badge. And third, every passenger in their vicinity had their phones out recording the incident. I didn't mean, Jasmine stammered, her anger evaporating instantly, replaced by cold horror. The woman said nothing, but her posture changed subtly. She stood straighter, her eyes becoming sharper, more assessing. With deliberate movements, she reached for the object at her waist, and Jasmine saw what it was. A police detective's shield. The subway car remained eerily silent as the woman spoke, her voice low and controlled. I think you and I need to have a conversation when we reach the next stop. Jasmine felt the blood drain from her face. The interview, her education, her future, all of it seemed to evaporate in that moment. In a single impulsive action, she had assaulted a pregnant police officer. On a crowded train, with witnesses filming everything. The train slowed as it approached the next station. Jasmine considered running when the doors opened. She could disappear into the crowd, pretend this never happened. But as she glanced around at the ring of phones still recording, she knew there was nowhere to hide. The woman, the officer, must have read her thoughts. Making this worse won't help either of us, she said quietly, so that only Jasmine could hear. Trust me on that. As the train doors opened, Jasmine felt tears welling in her eyes. The officer gestured for her to exit, and Jasmine's feet moved automatically, carrying her onto the platform. Behind them, passengers whispered and pointed. Someone said something about posting the video online. Another mentioned calling the police department to report the incident. On the platform, the officer guided Jasmine to a quieter corner. Jasmine expected handcuffs, a formal arrest, but instead the woman studied her face for a long moment. What's your name? The officer asked. Jasmine Taylor, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Well, Jasmine Taylor, the woman said, you've made a very poor decision today. The question is, what happens next? Jasmine looked down at her coffee-stained blouse, at her trembling hands, at the too tight shoes that had contributed to her misery. She thought about the scholarship email, about her mother working double shifts, about her brothers who looked up to her as the family success story. I don't know, she admitted, a tear sliding down her cheek. I really don't know. The officer's radio crackled and she turned slightly away to respond, speaking in clipped professional tones. When she turned back, her expression remained unreadable. Let's start with you coming down to the station with me, she said. We've got a lot to talk about. As they walked toward the exit, Jasmine caught her reflection in a darkened shop window, her stained blouse, her disheveled hair, her mascara beginning to run. Behind her reflection, she could see the officer, one hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly, the other holding her phone, presumably calling for backup. In that moment, the reality of what she had done hit Jasmine like a physical blow. One moment of lost control might have just derailed her entire life. And for what? A spilled coffee at the end of a bad morning? The officer held the door open, waiting for Jasmine to step through. Beyond it lay consequences she couldn't even begin to imagine. Taking a deep breath, Jasmine stepped forward, leaving behind the life she had known and walking into whatever lay ahead. Detective Sergeant Maria Gonzalez touched her cheek, where the sting of the slap was fading. In her 12 years on the force, she'd been punched, kicked, and even stabbed once, but never slapped across the face on public transportation. Especially not while 4 months pregnant. The young woman walking beside her kept her eyes fixed on the ground. Maria studied her carefully. Early 20s, well-dressed despite the coffee stain, clearly terrified. Not the typical profile of someone who went around assaulting strangers. This way, Maria directed, steering them toward the station exit rather than deeper into the subway system. The morning sunlight hit them as they emerged onto the street. Maria blinked, her eyes still adjusted to the fluorescent lighting below. She hadn't planned on heading back to the precinct for another 2 hours. The human trafficking case she'd been working undercover had consumed 6 months of her life, and today's surveillance operation was supposed to provide the final pieces of evidence they needed for arrests. Instead, here she was dealing with an impulsive slap from a stressed-out college student. Maria's phone buzzed in her pocket. Detective Chen, her partner, was probably wondering where she'd disappeared to. The surveillance van would have lost visual contact when she entered the subway station, and they'd be getting anxious. "We're going to walk 2 blocks to my car," she told the young woman, Jasmine, who nodded mutely. Maria sent a quick text to Chen. "Minor situation. Taking a detour. We'll explain later. Continue surveillance without me." She could almost hear Chen's frustrated sigh. After months of work, today was supposed to be the payoff. The trafficking ring they'd been tracking had connections that stretched across 3 states, with at least 30 victims that they knew of. But something in Maria couldn't let this incident with Jasmine go. Not when she had recognized that look of complete desperation in the young woman's eyes, a look she'd seen too many times before in victims and perpetrators alike. "I'm sorry," Jasmine said suddenly, breaking the silence as they walked. I've never hit anyone before. I don't know what happened. It was like something just snapped." Maria nodded but said nothing. Better to have this conversation in a controlled environment, not on a busy downtown sidewalk. Her unmarked police car was parked in a reserved spot behind a coffee shop, one of the perks of working with the shop's owner on a previous case. As Maria unlocked the doors, she noticed Jasmine glancing around, perhaps still considering making a run for it. "Don't," Maria advised simply. "It will only make things worse." Jasmine slumped into the passenger seat looking defeated. "Is it true what I heard someone say on the platform? That if you post the video online, I could lose my scholarship, my place in grad school?" Maria started the engine. "Is that what you're worried about right now?" "Not the fact that you assaulted a police officer." "I didn't know you were a police officer," Jasmine said quickly, then caught herself. "Not that it makes it okay to hit anyone. Today has been the worst day of my life, and now I've made it 1,000 times worse." Maria pulled into traffic, considering her options. By the book, she should take Jasmine directly to the precinct, book her for assault on a law enforcement officer, and let the system run its course. The charge would likely be reduced in plea bargaining, maybe down to simple assault or disorderly conduct, but it would still leave Jasmine with a record. Instead, Maria found herself turning away from the precinct, heading toward the waterfront park. "Where are we going?" Jasmine asked, anxiety edging her voice. "Somewhere we can talk," Maria replied, "before I make any decisions." The park was relatively empty on a weekday morning. Maria found a bench overlooking the water and gestured for Jasmine to sit. A light breeze rippled the harbor, boats bobbing gently at their moorings. "Tell me what happened today," Maria said, easing herself onto the bench. Her back had been bothering her since the 3rd month of pregnancy, another complication of trying to work undercover with a growing belly. Jasmine looked confused. "You mean on the subway?" "You were there—" "No," Maria interrupted. "All of it. What happened before the subway that led to you slapping a stranger?" For a moment, Jasmine said nothing, just stared out at the water. Then the words began to spill out. The scholarship loss, the roommate fight, the critical job interview she was now missing, the culmination of years of pressure trying to be the first in her family to succeed. "I worked so hard to get where I am," she said, her voice breaking. "My mom cleans hotel rooms 6 days a week so I could have this chance. My brothers think I'm some kind of hero for making it this far. And now I've thrown it all away because I couldn't keep it together for 1 more hour." Maria listened without interrupting. When Jasmine finally fell silent, Maria reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a protein bar. "Here," she said, offering it to Jasmine. "Your blood sugar's probably crashing on top of everything else." Jasmine accepted it with a bewildered look, but unwrapped it and took a small bite. "You know, I almost didn't become a cop," Maria said after a moment. "My family wanted me to be a doctor. In our community, police weren't always seen as the good guys." She touched her badge. "But I had this idea that I could change things from the inside." Be the kind of officer I needed when I was growing up? Is that working out? Jasmine asked quietly. Maria smiled slightly. Some days yes, some days no. Days like today. She trailed off, looking back toward the city skyline. The case I've been working on, the reason I was on that subway in plain clothes, involves young women not much different from you. College students, immigrants, runaways, people who found themselves in bad situations and made choices they couldn't take back. Are you comparing me to criminals? Jasmine asked, a hint of defiance returning to her voice. I'm saying that I've learned to look beyond the moment when someone's at their worst, Maria corrected. The question is, who are you when you're not having the worst day of your life? Jasmine considered this, finishing the protein bar. I'm someone who doesn't hit people, she said finally. I'm someone who tutors freshmen for free because I remember how hard that first semester was. I'm someone who calls my mom every Sunday no matter how busy I am. Maria nodded. Her phone buzzed again, a series of messages this time. She glanced down to see updates from Chen. The surveillance target was on the move. They needed her back. Here's what's going to happen, Maria said, standing up. We're going to go to the precinct. I'm going to file a report and you're going to give a statement. There will be consequences for what happened today. Jasmine's shoulders slumped. But, Maria continued, I'm also going to recommend that this be handled through the department's restorative justice program, rather than traditional prosecution. Jasmine looked up, confusion and hope mingling in her expression. What does that mean? It means that instead of a criminal record that follows you forever, you'll have a chance to make amends. Community service. Possibly anger management classes. Maria paused. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's hard work, and if you don't take it seriously, the original charges can be reinstated. Why would you do that for me? Jasmine asked. After what I did? Maria rested a hand on her pregnant belly. Because I have to believe that people are more than their worst moments. That's the world I want my child to grow up in. She checked her watch. Also because I have a human trafficking ring to take down. And frankly, I don't have time to process all the paperwork a formal assault charge would require. A small, surprised laugh escaped Jasmine. Don't mistake pragmatism for leniency, Maria warned, but there was no real heat in her words. When we get to the precinct, you'll see the side of me that earned the nickname the Hammer from defense attorneys. They walked back to the car in silence, but it was a different quality of silence than before. As Maria unlocked the doors, Jasmine spoke again. Detective Gonzalez, Maria supplied. Detective Gonzalez, Jasmine repeated. Thank you for giving me a chance to fix this. Maria met her eyes across the roof of the car. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see what community service in our youth outreach program involves. Captain Rivera believes firmly in the character-building properties of painting community centers in August heat. As they drove toward the precinct, Maria felt her phone buzzing again. The case wouldn't wait much longer. She needed to drop Jasmine with the desk sergeant, file the necessary paperwork, and get back to her real work. But as they pulled into the police station parking lot, Maria found herself hoping that this detour would lead somewhere positive. Too often in her job, she only saw people at their worst. Victims traumatized, perpetrators unrepentant. The in-between cases, the ones where someone made a terrible mistake and then had to find their way back, were rare. Ready? She asked Jasmine as she parked the car. Jasmine took a deep breath. Not really, but I'll do whatever I need to make this right. Maria nodded, satisfied with the answer. As they walked toward the station entrance, she found herself unexpectedly curious about what would come next, for both of them. The police station buzzed with activity. Officers moved between desks carrying files and coffee cups. Phones rang constantly. Someone had brought in donuts, and the sweet smell mixed with the stronger scent of industrial cleaner and burnt coffee. Jasmine sat alone in the interview room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The coffee stain on her blouse had dried to an ugly brown splotch. Her job interview had started 20 minutes ago. By now, they would have called her name, waited, and moved on to the next candidate. Another opportunity gone. She'd been in this room for almost an hour. Detective Gonzalez had left her with a paper cup of water and instructions to wait. Through the window in the door, Jasmine could see officers glancing her way occasionally. She wondered if they all knew what she had done. The door opened, and a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a captain's badge stepped in, followed by Detective Gonzalez. The detective had changed into uniform pants and a button-up shirt that accommodated her pregnancy more comfortably than her earlier casual clothes. The badge at her hip gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Ms. Taylor," the captain said, taking a seat across from her. "I'm Captain Rivera. Detective Gonzalez has filled me in on the incident this morning." Jasmine swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. Assaulting an officer is a serious offense," he continued, his voice stern but not unkind. "It carries a minimum sentence of—" "With all due respect, Captain," Detective Gonzalez interrupted, "Ms. Taylor didn't know I was an officer when the incident occurred, and as I explained, I believe this is an excellent candidate for the restorative justice program." Captain Rivera turned to his detective with a raised eyebrow. "You were the victim, Maria. I'd think you'd want to see the full weight of the law come down on someone who struck a pregnant woman. What I want," Detective Gonzalez said firmly, "is justice that actually helps everyone involved, not just punishment for punishment's sake." Jasmine looked back and forth between them, feeling like a spectator at a tennis match. The tension in the room was palpable. "May I speak?" she asked tentatively. Both officers turned to her, seeming almost surprised that she was still there. "I know I messed up," Jasmine said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I take full responsibility for what I did. It was wrong, and I'm prepared to face the consequences. But I also have to say that Detective Gonzalez is right. I had no idea she was a police officer. Not that it makes what I did any better, but I just want to be clear about that." Captain Rivera studied her for a moment. "The DA's office might see things differently. We have witnesses, video evidence, which show a stressed-out grad student having a very bad day, not a hardened criminal," Detective Gonzalez countered. "Captain, we've been talking about implementing this program for months. You said yourself we need to start with the right cases. I was thinking more along the lines of teenage shoplifters, not people who assault my pregnant detectives," Rivera replied dryly. Jasmine felt sick. They were talking about her future as if it were a policy debate. Meanwhile, her life was hanging in the balance. "What exactly is this program?" she asked, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. Detective Gonzalez turned to her. "It's an alternative to traditional prosecution. Instead of going through the court system, you'd complete a set of requirements designed to repair the harm caused and address the underlying issues: community service, possibly classes or counseling, regular check-ins with a program officer." "And if I do all that?" Jasmine asked. "If you successfully complete the program, the charges would be dismissed," Detective Gonzalez said. No criminal record. Hope flickered inside Jasmine for the first time since the subway incident. "I'll do it, whatever it takes." Captain Rivera leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "It's not entirely up to me. The DA's office has final say." "Anna Patel owes me a favor," Detective Gonzalez said. "Let me talk to her." The captain sighed, clearly outnumbered. "Fine. But Ms. Taylor stays here until we have an answer. And you," he pointed at his detective, "need to finish your paperwork on the Castillo surveillance before you do anything else. Chen's been blowing up my phone for the last hour." Detective Gonzalez nodded, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. "Of course, Captain. I'll get right on that." As they stood to leave, Jasmine called out, "Detective Gonzalez?" The officer paused at the door. "Thank you," Jasmine said simply. Detective Gonzalez's expression softened slightly. "Don't thank me yet. You've got a long road ahead." Left alone again, Jasmine slumped in her chair. The emotional roller coaster of the day had left her exhausted, but that tiny flicker of hope remained. Maybe, just maybe, she hadn't destroyed her entire future in one moment of stupidity. Time crawled by. Jasmine's phone had been taken when she arrived, so she couldn't check the time or call anyone. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten anything except the protein bar Detective Gonzalez had given her. The door opened again, and a young officer with a kind face brought in a sandwich and another cup of water. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, placing them on the table. "Detective Gonzalez asked me to check on you." "Is she still here?" Jasmine asked, gratefully unwrapping the sandwich. "She's on the phone with the DA's office," the officer replied. Been in there for almost 40 minutes. Jasmine took a bite of the sandwich. Turkey and cheese, not bad for police station food. Is that good or bad? The officer shrugged. Hard to say with legal stuff, but between you and me, when Detective Gonzalez sets her mind to something, she usually gets her way. After he left, Jasmine ate slowly, savoring each bite. The enormity of what was happening had begun to sink in. She'd never been in trouble before, not even a detention in high school. Now she was sitting in a police station, waiting to find out if she would have a criminal record for the rest of her life. She thought about calling her mother, but quickly dismissed the idea. Mom had enough to worry about without adding this to her plate. If things worked out with this program, maybe Jasmine could keep the whole incident to herself. Another hour passed before the door opened again. This time, Detective Gonzalez entered alone, carrying a folder and looking tired. Good news and bad news, she said, taking a seat. The good news is that ADA Patel has agreed to divert your case to the Restorative Justice Program. Jasmine exhaled in relief. And the bad news? The bad news is that you're the program's first participant, which means all eyes will be on you. If you fail, if you don't take this seriously, it's not just your future at stake, it's the future of the program itself. The weight of that responsibility settled on Jasmine's shoulders. I understand. Detective Gonzalez opened the folder and pushed several forms across the table. You'll need to sign these. It's your agreement to participate in the program and accept its requirements. Jasmine scanned the documents. 100 hours of community service at the police department's Youth Outreach Center. Weekly anger management classes for 3 months. Regular meetings with a program coordinator. A written apology letter to Detective Gonzalez. This is a lot, Jasmine said, overwhelmed by the list. So was slapping a pregnant police officer, Detective Gonzalez replied, though without malice. And this is still better than what you'd be facing otherwise. Jasmine nodded and signed the forms one by one. As she reached the last page, she paused. What happens now? Now, Detective Gonzalez said, checking her watch. You go home. Your first meeting with the program coordinator is tomorrow morning at 9. Don't be late. That's it? Jasmine asked, surprised. I can just leave? That's how trust works, Ms. Taylor. We're trusting you to show up tomorrow to follow through on your commitments. Don't make me regret giving you this chance. As detective, Gonzalez gathered the signed forms. Jasmine noticed dark circles under her eyes. The detective's hand rested briefly on her pregnant belly in what seemed like an unconscious gesture of protection. Can I ask you something? Jasmine said hesitantly. Detective Gonzalez looked up. Yes? Why did you fight so hard for this? For me? You don't know me. I hit you. Most people would want to see me punished. The detective was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. In my 12 years on the force, I've seen what happens when we focus only on punishment without rehabilitation. It doesn't work. It doesn't make victims whole, and it doesn't help offenders become contributing members of society. She stood, tucking the folder under her arm. Besides, everyone deserves a second chance. Even people who make really stupid decisions on really bad days. A knock at the door interrupted them. Captain Rivera leaned in, his expression urgent. Gonzalez Chen just called. They've got movement at the warehouse. If we're going to make the bust, it needs to happen now. Detective Gonzalez straightened, instantly alert. I'll be right there. She turned back to Jasmine. Officer Diaz will process your release and return your belongings. Remember, 9 o'clock tomorrow. I'll be there, Jasmine promised. As Detective Gonzalez headed for the door, Jasmine called after her one more time. Detective, be careful out there. The officer paused, a hint of surprise crossing her features. Then she nodded and was gone, the sound of her quick footsteps fading down the hallway. Alone again, Jasmine took a deep breath. The day that had started so terribly had taken an unexpected turn. She wasn't out of the woods, far from it, but she had been given a chance she hadn't dared to hope for. As Officer Diaz led her through the process of reclaiming her phone and signing release forms, Jasmine made a silent promise to herself, and to the detective who had gone out on a limb for her. She would not waste this opportunity. 2 weeks had passed since that fateful morning on the subway. Jasmine pushed open the heavy door of the youth center, balancing a cardboard tray of coffee cups in her other hand. The center hummed with activity. Teenagers playing basketball in the gym, younger kids working on homework in the computer lab, volunteers moving between rooms with art supplies and snacks. She'd completed 23 hours of her community service requirement so far, mostly helping with administrative tasks and supervising activities. Today marked her first anger management class scheduled for later that afternoon. "Morning, Ms. Taylor," called Robbie, one of the regular kids at the center. At 14, he was all gangly limbs and attitude, but he'd warmed up to Jasmine after she helped him with an English essay. "Hey, Robbie, ready for that math test today?" she asked, setting down the coffee tray at the front desk. He groaned dramatically. "Don't remind me. Fractions are the worst. Come find me after school if you need help," she offered. "I've got a few tricks that might make them easier." Robbie nodded and jogged off to join his friends, his 2 big sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Lena, the center's director, emerged from her office. "Is one of those for me?" she asked, eyeing the coffee tray hopefully. "Caramel latte with an extra shot," Jasmine confirmed, handing her a cup. "Consider it a thank you for not making me clean the bathrooms yesterday." Lena laughed. "Don't thank me yet. The art room needs reorganizing after last night's mural project. It looks like a glitter bomb exploded in there." Jasmine groaned, but there was no real disappointment behind it. The truth was, she'd come to enjoy her time at the center more than she'd expected. The kids were challenging but rewarding to work with, and the staff had been welcoming despite knowing why she was there. "Any word on when Detective Gonzalez is stopping by?" Jasmine asked, trying to sound casual. She hadn't seen the detective since that day at the station, though she'd heard through Lena that the officer checked in regularly on her progress. "Actually, she called this morning. She's coming around 11 to review some of our security protocols." Lena gave Jasmine a knowing look. "Any particular reason you're asking?" Jasmine shrugged, feeling her cheeks warm slightly. "Just curious. I've been working on that apology letter. Thought I might give it to her in person." The truth was more complicated. Over the past 2 weeks, Jasmine had found herself thinking about the detective often, wondering how her pregnancy was progressing. If the human trafficking case had concluded successfully, and mostly, why she had shown such unexpected kindness to someone who had assaulted her. "Well, you'll get your chance in about an hour," Lena said. "Until then, glitter awaits." The art room was indeed a disaster. Jasmine spent the next 45 minutes sorting supplies, wiping down tables and vacuuming tiny sparkling specks from every conceivable surface. By the time she finished, her dark jeans were covered in a fine dusting of craft materials, and she'd found glitter in her hair, on her face, and somehow inside her shoes. She was washing her hands in the bathroom when she heard a familiar voice in the hallway. Taking a deep breath, Jasmine checked her reflection in the mirror. She'd dressed more carefully today, wearing clean jeans and a simple blue blouse that brought out the warm undertones in her dark skin. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat puff, and she'd even applied a touch of lip gloss. Not that it mattered what the detective thought of her appearance. Detective Gonzalez was speaking with Lena when Jasmine emerged from the bathroom. The officer wore plain clothes again, dark slacks and a loose-fitting maroon sweater that complemented her olive complexion. Her pregnancy was more noticeable now, the small bump having grown in the past 2 weeks. Lena spotted Jasmine and waved her over. "Detective, you remember Jasmine Taylor?" Detective Gonzalez turned, her expression neutral but not unfriendly. "Ms. Taylor, Lena tells me you've been doing good work here." "I'm trying," Jasmine said, surprised by how nervous she suddenly felt. "It's actually been nice. The kids are great. They're certainly honest," the detective said with a hint of a smile. "Robbie asked me last week if I'd swallowed a basketball." Jasmine couldn't help but laugh. "That sounds like him." Lena's phone buzzed. "Excuse me, I need to take this." "Detective, why don't you and Jasmine continue your conversation in the break room? It's quieter in there." Before either woman could protest, Lena had disappeared into her office, leaving them standing awkwardly in the hallway. "I was going to grab some water," Detective Gonzalez said after a moment. "Break room's this way, right?" Jasmine nodded and led the way, acutely aware of the detective following behind her. The break room was mercifully empty. The small round table cleared of the usual snack wrappers and coffee mugs. "Please sit," Jasmine said, gesturing to a chair. "Can I get you that water?" "I'm not an invalid, Ms. Taylor," the detective said dryly. "Pregnancy doesn't render me incapable of getting my own drink." Jasmine winced. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's fine," Detective Gonzalez interrupted, her expression softening slightly. "And you can call me Maria. When I'm not in uniform, the detective part feels a bit formal." "Maria," Jasmine repeated, testing the name. "And I'm just Jasmine, not Ms. Taylor." Maria walked to the small refrigerator and retrieved a bottle of water. "So, Jasmine, how are the anger management classes going? First one's this afternoon, actually." "I'm a little nervous." Maria unscrewed the bottle cap and took a drink. "Don't be, Dr. Wilson is excellent. Tough but fair. She won't let you get away with surface-level participation, but she's not there to make you feel worse about yourself either." "Sounds like someone else I know," Jasmine said without thinking, then immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry, that was accurate," Maria supplied with a raised eyebrow, but there was a hint of amusement in her voice. She lowered herself into a chair, one hand automatically going to her back. Being tough but fair is part of the job description. Jasmine sat across from her, fidgeting with the sleeve of her blouse. "I actually wanted to give you something. Well, not give exactly, but..." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "It's the apology letter, part of my program requirements." Maria took the envelope but didn't open it. "Thank you. I'll read it later." An awkward silence fell between them. Jasmine searched for something to say that wouldn't sound ridiculous or insincere. "How's the case going?" she asked finally. "The one you were working on that day?" Maria's expression darkened slightly. "We made the arrests. Found 16 women being held in the warehouse, most of them younger than you. The ringleaders are in custody, but the legal process is just beginning." "That's good though, right? That you found them?" "Yes and no. We saved those 16, but there are hundreds more out there in similar situations." Maria sighed, rubbing her temple. "Sorry, occupational hazard. It's hard to see the wins sometimes when you know how much work is still left to do." Jasmine nodded, understanding the feeling all too well from her own struggles. "My mom says that all the time about her housekeeping job. No matter how many rooms she cleans, there's always another dirty one waiting." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman," Maria said. "She is." Jasmine hesitated, then added, "I haven't told her about any of this. By the way, the subway, the program, she has enough to worry about." Maria studied her for a moment. "You mentioned that day that she works hard to support you and your brothers. That must put a lot of pressure on you to succeed." "It does," Jasmine admitted. "Every test, every paper, every job interview feels like it has her future riding on it too, you know? Like if I fail, I'm not just failing myself." "That's a heavy burden to carry alone," Maria said quietly. Jasmine shrugged. "Not as heavy as the one she carries. At least I got the chance to go to college. She never did." Maria took another sip of water. "What are you studying?" "Social work. I want to help kids navigate the system better than I did after my dad left." The words came out before Jasmine could consider them, more honest than she'd intended to be. Something in Maria's expression shifted. "That's why Lena says you're so good with the teenagers here. You understand what they're going through." "Some of it," Jasmine acknowledged. "Not all. Everyone's story is different, including yours," Maria said, "which doesn't excuse what happened that day, but does help explain it." Jasmine felt a lump form in her throat. "I've been wanting to ask you something." "Go ahead." "Why did you help me? You could have pressed charges, had me arrested for real. No one would have blamed you. So why didn't you?" Maria was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes thoughtful. "Because 20 years ago I was a lot like you. Stressed, overwhelmed, one bad day away from making a mistake that could have derailed my entire future." She traced a pattern on the tabletop with her finger. "The difference is that when I had my moment of weakness, someone gave me a chance to make it right." "What happened?" Jasmine asked softly. "I got caught shoplifting a textbook I couldn't afford for my criminal justice class, ironically enough," Maria said with a wry smile. "The store owner was a retired cop. Instead of calling the police, he made me work off the debt in his store. By the time I'd paid it off, he'd become a mentor. He wrote my recommendation letter for the police academy." "So you were paying it forward with me?" Jasmine realized. "Something like that," Maria agreed. Though I'd appreciate if you didn't spread that story around the precinct. The Hammer has a reputation to maintain. Jasmine mimed, locking her lips. Your secret's safe with me. They both laughed, the tension between them finally breaking. For a moment, they weren't officer and offender, but simply two women from different walks of life finding unexpected common ground. The door to the break room swung open, and Lena poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but Detective, there's a call for you at the front desk. Something about court testimony schedules? Maria nodded and rose from her chair, one hand supporting her lower back. Duty calls. Good luck with your first class today, Jasmine. Thanks. Jasmine stood as well. And thank you for, everything. Maria paused at the door, the envelope with Jasmine's letter still in her hand. Don't thank me yet. You've still got 77 hours of community service left, and knowing Lena, the boys' bathroom is probably next on your cleaning list. But as she turned to go, Jasmine caught the hint of a smile on the detective's face, not quite friendship, but something warmer than the professional detachment of their first meeting. Progress, Jasmine thought. Small but real, much like the steps she was taking to rebuild what she'd nearly destroyed in that moment on the subway. 3 months later, Jasmine stood in front of the mirror in her apartment bathroom adjusting her new blazer. The navy blue fabric was crisp and professional, a splurge she'd allowed herself after getting the part-time position at Henderson and Patel Law Associates. They had called her 2 weeks ago, explaining that although she had missed her original interview, another position had opened up. Jasmine suspected Maria might have had something to do with it, especially given the Patel in the firm's name, but the detective had neither confirmed nor denied any involvement when Jasmine mentioned the coincidence. You look great, said Zoe from the doorway. Their relationship had improved over the past few months. After completing her first anger management class, Jasmine had finally opened up to her roommate about everything that had happened. To her surprise, Zoe had been understanding, even offering to drive her to the youth center when the buses were running late. Thanks, Jasmine said, smoothing down the front of her blazer. I just want to look professional. This is kind of a big deal. Today was her final presentation to the community center class, the last requirement of her restorative justice program. She would be sharing her story with a group of at-risk teens and their parents, talking about how a single moment of lost control had nearly cost her everything. Zoe handed her a travel mug of coffee. You've got this. Just speak from the heart like you practiced. Jasmine took the mug gratefully. That's what I'm afraid of. Speaking from the heart means being vulnerable in front of a bunch of strangers. And one not quite stranger, Zoe reminded her with a meaningful look. Maria had confirmed yesterday that she would be attending the presentation. In her text message, she had written, I wouldn't miss it. You've come too far for me to skip the finale. Over the past 3 months, Jasmine and Maria had developed a cautious friendship. As Jasmine continued her community service at the youth center, Maria would stop by occasionally to check on her progress. Their conversations had grown more personal, moving beyond the circumstances that had brought them together. Jasmine had shared stories about her academic struggles and family pressures. Maria had talked about the challenges of being a pregnant detective and her hopes for her child's future. The baby was due in just over a month now. Maria had started her maternity leave last week, earlier than planned after her doctor ordered her to reduce her stress levels. She'd complained about it to Jasmine during their last meeting, frustrated at being sidelined from an important case. Jasmine had sympathized but secretly agreed with the doctor. Maria pushed herself too hard. Time to go, Zoe said, checking her phone. You don't want to be late for your own presentation. The community center was more crowded than Jasmine had expected. Teens slouched in chairs, some looking bored, others curious. Parents sat straighter, their expressions ranging from hopeful to skeptical. Lena had explained that many of these families had been referred to the program by schools or the juvenile justice system. Kids who were on the edge of serious trouble, parents desperate for intervention before things went too far. Jasmine spotted Maria near the back of the room, her pregnant belly now unmistakable beneath a flowing top. Their eyes met, and Maria gave her a small nod of encouragement. Lena stepped to the front of the room. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today we have a special speaker, someone who has completed our restorative justice program and has an important story to share. Please welcome Jasmine Taylor. The applause was polite but unenthusiastic. These were people who had heard too many speeches, too many promises of change that never materialized. Jasmine understood their skepticism all too well. She took her place at the podium, set down her notes, and then deliberately pushed them aside. This wasn't about reciting a perfect speech. It was about truth. 3 months ago, she began, I slapped a pregnant woman on a crowded subway car because she accidentally spilled my coffee. The blunt opening caught their attention. Several teens sat up straighter. Parents exchanged glances. I had lost my scholarship that morning, fought with my roommate, missed my bus, and I was late for a job interview that I desperately needed. None of that matters, though. None of it excuses what I did. Jasmine paused, looking out at the faces watching her. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that the woman I hit was Detective Maria Gonzalez, who happened to be riding that subway while working undercover. In an instant, I went from being a stressed-out grad student to someone who had assaulted a police officer. A pregnant police officer at that. She saw one of the mothers wince in sympathy. A teenage boy in the front row stopped pretending to be bored. By all rights, I should have ended up with a criminal record that would have destroyed my chances at finishing my degree, getting a job in my field, becoming the person I had worked so hard to become. Instead, I was given a chance to make things right through this program. For the next 15 minutes, Jasmine talked about her journey, the community service hours, the anger management classes, the hard conversations she'd had with herself about the pressures she was under, and the healthier ways to handle them. She talked about learning to recognize her triggers and developing strategies to de-escalate her own emotions before they exploded. The hardest part wasn't the hours of community service or even facing Detective Gonzalez. After what I'd done, Jasmine said, her voice growing softer, it was admitting to myself that I wasn't handling things as well as I pretended to be, that I needed help. That being strong doesn't mean carrying everything alone. She looked directly at Maria now, whose eyes hadn't left her throughout the presentation. I was lucky. I heard someone who chose compassion over punishment, someone who saw the person I could be, not just the mistake I had made. Not everyone gets that chance. Turning back to the audience, Jasmine continued with more strength in her voice. But that's what this program is about. It's about recognizing that people are more than their worst moments, that justice can be about healing and growth, not just punishment. That's true for me, and it's true for every person in this room. By the time she finished speaking, the energy in the room had shifted. Several parents were nodding. One father wiped away tears. Even the most disaffected teenagers seemed to be thinking about her words. During the question and answer session that followed, a woman raised her hand. What would you say to someone who thinks programs like this are too soft on people who break the law? Jasmine considered the question carefully. I'd say that the easy path would have been serving a short sentence or paying a fine, painful in the moment but over quickly. This program demanded that I face what I'd done every single day for 3 months. It required real change, not just doing my time. There was nothing soft about it. After the formal presentation ended, several people approached Jasmine to speak with her privately. Parents asked for advice about their children. Teens wanted to know if the anger management classes had really helped or were just boring talks. Jasmine answered each question honestly, staying long after the scheduled end time. Finally, the crowd thinned. Lena caught Jasmine's eye from across the room and gave her a thumbs up before turning back to her conversation with a school counselor. Maria approached, moving more slowly now with her advanced pregnancy. That, she said simply, was excellent. Jasmine felt a wave of relief wash over her. Really, I was so nervous. Couldn't tell, Maria replied. You seem completely in control. She emphasized the last word meaningfully. I'm getting there, Jasmine admitted. It's a work in progress, Maria smiled. Aren't we all? She glanced around to make sure no one was in earshot, then lowered her voice. I have something to tell you. The program review board met yesterday. Your case is officially closed. You've completed all requirements. Jasmine's eyes widened. So that means no charges, no record. Clean slate, Maria confirmed. Congratulations, Jasmine. You did it. Tears pricked at Jasmine's eyes. I don't know what to say except thank you. For believing in me when you had every reason not to. You did the hard work, Maria said firmly. I just opened the door. They walked together toward the exit, moving at Maria's unhurried pace. Outside, The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the community center lawn. "So what's next for you?" Maria asked. "Besides the new job?" Jasmine took a deep breath of the cool air. "I've been thinking about that a lot. This experience, it changed my perspective on what I want to do with my degree." "How so?" "I still want to be a social worker, but I'm thinking about focusing on restorative justice programs specifically. Maybe even developing something for schools to catch problems before kids end up in the system." Maria nodded approvingly. "The world could use more of that approach. What about you?" Jasmine asked. "Besides the obvious baby plans." Maria rested both hands on her rounded belly. "Maternity leave for now. Then back to work, but I'm transferring to the Community Liaison Division. Less undercover work, more programs like this one?" She smiled ruefully. "My captain nearly fell out of his chair when I requested the transfer. Said he never thought he'd see the hammer working with prevention programs." "People change," Jasmine said softly. "Yes, they do." Maria reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, the same one Jasmine had given her months ago, containing her apology letter. "I brought this to return to you." Jasmine looked at it in confusion. "Why would you give it back?" "Because it's not needed anymore," Maria explained. "The apology was accepted long ago, and you've more than made amends through your actions. Some things don't need to be kept on record." Jasmine took the envelope, touched by the gesture. "Thank you." As they reached the parking lot, Maria winced suddenly and pressed a hand to her side. "Are you okay?" Jasmine asked, alarmed. "Just a kick," Maria reassured her. "This little one has been active today." She hesitated, then asked, "Would you like to feel?" Surprised by the offer, Jasmine nodded. Maria guided her hand to the spot, and after a moment Jasmine felt it. A strong, definite push against her palm. "Wow," she breathed. "That's amazing." "It really is," Maria agreed, her expression softening in a way Jasmine had rarely seen. Life continuing despite everything. They stood there for a moment, connected by this simple human experience, so far from their first encounter on that crowded subway car. "I should get going," Maria said eventually. "Doctor's orders include an embarrassing amount of rest." "Take care of yourself," Jasmine said. "And maybe let me know when the baby arrives." "I will." Maria started toward her car, then turned back. "You know, Jasmine, some of the best people I know are the ones who have faced their mistakes head-on and come out stronger for it. Remember that." As Jasmine watched Maria drive away, she thought about how differently things could have gone, how a single moment of anger might have defined her life. Instead, she had been given the chance to define herself through what came after. She looked down at the returned envelope in her hand, then carefully tore it in half and dropped the pieces into a nearby recycling bin. The past was important, but it didn't need to be carried forever. Walking to her own car, Jasmine felt lighter than she had in months. Tomorrow she would start her new job. Next week she would register for her final semester of classes. And somewhere in the future, she would create programs to help others find the same second chance she had been given. One moment of darkness had nearly cost her everything, but in that darkness she had found a path toward a different kind of light.